Welcome everyone to the third webinar in our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion series titled Exploring the Black Experience in Rotary. I would like to introduce the moderator for this session, Dr. Todd Bowtie Jenkins. Todd is an award-winning global inclusion leader, practitioner, consultant, speaker, trainer, and author, and also a member of the Rotary DEI task force. For Todd, the bow tie symbolizes the art of bringing people together through education, exposure, and best practices, but in a sophisticated way, one conversation at a time. Todd is on a mission daily to create spaces for humans to belong and thrive, and we are so lucky to have him lead this conversation. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you so much, Leanne. And hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day. It is good to be here. It's good to have breath and be alive. And most importantly, I am so excited for today's conversation, exploring the Black experience in Rotary. Oh man, you all that have attended or are attending today is a part of an incredible moment. It's a historic moment, this conference, the first conversation to our knowledge, to be intentional about race and Rotary, especially the Black experience. We have been doing these conversations with the DEI webinars series. Great support from the staff, great support from my partner, Beth Keck, who's also on the call today. In these previous webinars, we have just continuing to have the conversation of what is diversity, equity, inclusion, and what does that look like in Rotary? How can we continue to put what we are learning into actions and change our behavior, change the way we think, but most importantly, end with our impact, which is what called us all here together, is to serve. And so today for our conversation, we're gonna do just that. We're gonna have a conversation about race and identities and why that matters as we come into our service above self model, as well as understanding our own social identities, the impact with our service in our club or in our community experience. But most importantly, I love this. Today, we're going to talk about how we can continue to create the spaces, allow the spaces, and also, be proud of the spaces for all Rotarians to bring their whole, full, most authentic selves to the organization, because we know that it makes us all bigger, better, stronger together. So, of course, I am here to facilitate the conversation. And so I want to get out of the way and really allow our panelists to introduce themselves. And I would tell you, my friends, oh man, I am just so excited. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to turn it over to the panelists just to tell us a little bit about yourself and what are some of the things or one thing that you hope for participants to learn out of today's conversation. Let's start with my good friend, Nadine.
Thank you, Todd. Thanks for the welcome, and thank you to everyone that's joined us. I'm really pleased to be here. My name's Nadine Pemberton. I'm a Rotarian from the Rotary Club of Sheffield in England. I've been in Rotary for about 8 years, and I love Rotary. I say I was a Rotarian before I even knew what Rotary was. I founded Rotarians Against Racism in 2020 in response to the things that we were seeing happening in America around race. And I'm also really proud to be part of the Rotary International Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Task Force. Outside of Rotary, because there is a life outside of Rotary, so I'm told, I'm a lawyer, been qualified about 17 years. I'm also a coach, and I run my own company. And I'm just really happy to be here. I think, Todd, you asked what would we like participants to get out of today. For me, I want people to know that not only is it okay to have this conversation about race and about the Black experience of Rotary, it's right to have the conversation. And I want people to not be afraid of this and afraid of talking about race and identity in Rotary. Thanks, Todd.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Now we're going to go to one of my favorite places as well in the world, to my good friend and my brother, Felipe. Oi, Felipe, take it over.
Hello, Todd. Hello, everyone. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Here is almost night, but I'm sure we have a lot of time zones here. So good day for everybody who is watching us right now. My name is Felipe Bento. I'm a software engineer here in Brazil. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Ouro Preto. I'm currently the district representative for the Rotary District 4521. And I'm one of the co-founders of Wakanda Rotaria, a young Black movement inside Rotary family to promote and raise awareness about the Black issues that we have here in Brazil. And my hopes for this webinar is people actually learn about the Black experiences and also learn how to like promote and new tools that they can use to promote and raise awareness in their clubs, in their communities. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you for being here. Now we're going to go to the motherland, and I'm going to call on Miss Pearl to grace us with her presence.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you. Of course, you know I'm excited to be here. My name is Ijoma Pearl Okoro. I am from Nigeria. I'm a Rotarian. I've been Rotary since 1991, and I've served Rotary as district governor in the year 2015. 2016, my club is Rotary Club of Port Harcourt. Besides Rotary, I also work as an insurance executive with over 26 years experience as a regional director for Consolidated Hallmark Insurance. And side by side that, I'm also founder for Refeed, an NGO with bias on women and little children, especially the widows. Today, I'm actually excited that we're having this conversation because I'm one of those people that believe that even before you become a Rotarian, you're first a person. And that person means you have a lot of talent, you have a lot of, things that you come with. And if you are in an association where you find yourself out of order and there's no inclusion, you definitely will just remain in your cocoon without bringing in your best. So I'm hoping that at the end of this conversation, people will actually come out of their shells and begin to take life more differently and excitedly too. Thanks to be here, Dr. Todd.
Awesome, thank you so much. And definitely last but not least, I'm in the south of the US, but we're about to go up to the north where it's just a little bit colder. Dwayne, will you please introduce yourself and share your story with the world?
It'd be my pleasure. Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good night, as Todd said. My name is Dwayne Norris. I am a Rotarian, proud Rotarian from out of New York. Rotary Club of Harlem, if you guys can see the shirt, I represent proudly. And it is beautiful to see so many Black and melanated faces on my screen here today. It's a rarity within Rotary to be able to do this and have this conversation. I'm an entrepreneur, so I run my own business, two businesses actually. I am proud Director of Community Outreach and Engagement for our Rotary Club in Harlem, which basically means that I am in charge of developing new relationships within our community, understanding what our community needs are, and looking to find projects and solutions that we can bring to the table to support our community's needs. And for the conversation today, I'm hoping that essentially we can do just that all of us within Rotary can better understand what our community needs, the Black community, the Hispanic community, all different communities who bring their full authentic selves, but understanding what their needs are so that we can meet them where they are and make sure that we're addressing the holistic issues that need to get addressed. So very excited for the conversation and look forward to learning from my esteemed panelists here. There's some sharp people in this room.
No, thank you. This is awesome. Oh man, what a space. And my friends today, all 600 plus and growing, feel free to go into the chat and introduce yourself to the world. We love to see who's here. And this is what's so great about today's conversation. It is a global conversation about Blackness. And so before we can start today's conversation, I think it's very important to talk about our history. And I will tell you all, my friends, to be very, very transparent, as we went to search for the history of race and Rotary, it is still several gaps or not even identified information that's within our history book of Rotary. And we all know on this call that we have continued to progress in a way that we are trying our best to ensure that Rotary is for all walks of life and all different visual representation. And so as we looked at our Rotary Black history, you can see on the slide today that it's so many individuals that are continuing to be named when we put out the call to ask for the history, to ensure that it's written so it's not forgotten, and as well as ensuring that it's empowered so we can continue to lead in a way. So as you can see on this slide, I know that is so much more out there. And so I want to encourage you all, if you know any history from this perspective of Black history and Rotary, we want you to send your stories. Send the stories to membership development at Rotary. Be a part of the historic moment to help us really to recognize. And of course, here in the United States and several parts around the world, the month of February is Black History Month. And so we want to say happy Black History Month. But I also want to say, you know, Black history is not confined to only 28 days. It's really 365 days. So you know what? Happy Black History Year. And every day we should celebrate. And with that being said, I'm happy to now introduce to you all two special guests who have done a great job to allow for us to be on this call today so Black history can really be celebrated. So I'm going to turn it over to our team and our staff to roll the videos at this time.
Being prejudiced against is really as bad as being invisible when you're not seen. And Rotary is peculiarly situated because of its makeup to effect changes in our world. It's known and respected in more than 200 countries, you know, and with more than 1 million members, the influence is far-reaching. Okay. The acceptance of women in Rotary, although it was a long time coming, has really resounded all over the world. It's not the acceptance of Blacks in Rotary is not in that same category. Blacks in the United States in Rotary are different from Blacks in African countries or other countries in Rotary. In the beginning, Black men and women were few in number in the United States. In the United States, and that is different, mostly because few were invited, and those few, when they were invited, didn't see club meetings as welcoming places because they didn't look like them. But now that club configurations are beginning to look like the communities, and that's at the suggestion of Rotary, it's a more comfortable place for Black men and Black women. As young Black women concerned with their image in a community, connections with the Rotary make all the difference, because as they participate in the work of the community, they're seen and identified and recognized for what they're doing. They're represented on the world stage. Rotary is in itself an education for young Black women, introduces them to the world. I learned things about the world I didn't know, not just from visiting, and I've visited in so many countries and participated in events in so many countries, but just listening to what Rotarians have found about the places with which they work. But if you look at Rotary in the United States and the Black women who are in leadership positions, you can count them on the fingers of one hand. Okay, why is that? Is it because they're not capable? Is it because they're not invited? Is it because they're not asked? Is it because they're not recognized? They can go in to Rotary and start taking those positions and start beginning to earn themselves the respect that they deserve. And I think that's why Black women should be.
Greetings, Rotarians and friends. During my 30+ years of Rotary membership, much has often been made of female membership in Rotary. This series of webinars, however, is the first international webinar discussion of which I am aware, where we're talking about the Rotary experience as defined by the color of our skin and the importance of diversity in Rotary's membership. And the color of my skin defines me and who I am, and therefore what I bring to Rotary, as much as my gender. But does the color of my skin bring anything to the Rotary movement that could not otherwise be provided by Rotarians who are not Black? Because I am Black, how can my life's experiences uniquely translate into promoting Rotary's goal of doing good in the world, of promoting peace and world understanding? Those are questions way too big for the time allowed me, but here's one thought. I remember when I was a 3rd grader, my teacher took me aside and said, "Carolyn, you have the potential and ability to be anything that you want to be when you grow up. But there will be people who will tell you you cannot because of the color of your skin. Don't believe them. You can make your dreams come true, but you're going to need the best education you can get. You'll need scholarships to go to college. You will need the best grades, and you need to start now." I've never forgotten Miss Tolliver's words, and I took her advice. I got the best grades, I got the education, I became a lawyer, I made something of myself. And as a Rotarian, I've tried to pass along that lesson to other children who are disadvantaged. You see, when you're a minority, there are too many times in your life when you are put down, discouraged, not supported, belittled, and worse, all because of the color of your skin. It's all too easy to believe that your life does not matter, but your life does matter even if you're Black. Every child needs a Miss Tolliver. On the other hand, it's impossible to pull yourself up by your bootstraps if you lack shoes. Rotary has been the opportunity to direct humanitarian support to minority and disadvantaged children and to give them the possibility of making something of themselves. They matter. If I thought long and hard, I'm sure I could remember other events in my life that relate to the color of my skin. But the truth is, I have not dwelled over long on each one. But I know I have processed every event, and those events have made me who I am today, and that is the person and the unique perspective that I bring to Rotary every day. So to Rotary, today's moderator and panelists, I wish you every success in your groundbreaking conversation. As a great Chinese philosopher once said, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Today's webinar is a good beginning.
Thank you so much. And wow, what an honor to have both of those incredible women. Miss Carolyn, was the first woman trustee, and Miss, who I call Mama Sylvia, who's the first woman in the entire world to serve as Rotary Club president, both Black women. And so as we have this conversation today, and as we continue to discuss, one of the interesting pieces that people ask, and you may be very curious to understand and hear this, how many Black Rotarians are there in the world? And I would tell you, my friends, I wish I could tell you the answer, but at this moment, we do not have that answer because we as an organization have not typically asked for a race to be disclosed in our Rotary census or our demographics. However, there's continuing conversation that's taken place. What should be asked on future census, so we can actually be able to capture this data, since one of the most important things of diversity, equity, and inclusion is being able to reflect the community in which you live. And so we want to make sure that we have some baselines there. And so it was another great question. Thank you all so much for giving your feedback as participants when you registered for this webinar. And one of the questions that we asked of these social identities, which is the most commonly shared in your club or organization? You said, as a participant, 30% of our participants, number one is race or ethnicity. And so we can see why this matters, but also to put it in another context, according to a study by McKinsey and Company, Race in the Workplace, from the United States Landscape. I want you all to hear this, or you can read it on the screen. On the current trajectory, it would take 95 years for Black employees to reach talent parity, okay? And across all levels in the United States private sector. So as you can see, not just from Rotary, but as a humanity, why this conversation matters. And so I really want Nadine, if you don't mind, just really sharing with us more of your perspective of identities and why it matters and why we should be having this conversation. If you can talk to us about the diversity wheel.
Thanks, Todd. I can certainly do that. Just first to that question about why is it important, why we're having this conversation. You've reflected there on us not having the data about the Black Rotarians that we've had. You've also said that it's really important for us as Rotarians and our clubs to reflect our communities. And those are just some of the reasons why it's important for us to have this conversation, to have it now. In Rotary, we talk about women, we talk about youth. We're even getting better at supporting our younger LGBTQ plus youth in Rotary Youth Exchange, but we still don't have the conversation about race, and it's really important. And I think if there was ever a time to have this conversation, it's right now. And so that's why we're here, and that's what we're doing. And I'm really happy to be part of that. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about race versus racial identity before I move on to the diversity wheel. And although race has no genetic or scientific basis, the concept of race is really important and really consequential. Societies use race to establish and to justify systems of power, systems of privilege, of disenfranchisement and oppression. And when we talk about racial identity, we can think about that in terms of it being externally imposed. So how do others perceive me? And also internally constructed, how do I identify myself? Understanding how our identities and experiences have been shaped by race is also really important. We're all awarded certain privileges or disadvantages because of our race, whether or not we're actually conscious of that. One of the things that I've heard from Rotarians and other people is, I don't see you as Black, Nadine, I'm colourblind. And I think it's also really important to say that when someone says that they don't see race, ultimately that allows them to ignore racism and it's not helping to solve it. So the concept of race itself is intimately connected to our lives and has serious implications for many of us. It operates in a real and really definitive way that, as I've said, can confer benefits and privilege to some and withhold them from others. And so ignoring race means ignoring the establishment of racial hierarchies in society and the injustices that those hierarchies have created and continue to enforce. And so again, it's really important for us to talk about race in Rotary as we think about our own systems and how they were built and what those systems mean for the Rotarians, specifically Black Rotarians, because that's what we're talking about today within the systems. So you've got the diversity wheel up, and I'll just say this is one of many diversity wheels. You can search the internet and find different ones, whichever might suit you. But the diversity wheel helps us to see the many ways I think that we're different. It shows that there are some differences that we can see easily, some diversity is visible, and it also reminds us that some diversity is not visible, okay? And there are some questions there that I want you to think about and reflect on. And when we talk about race and identity, it brings up all kinds of different feelings for people. So many of you out there, if not all of you, will be feeling something really specific and really particular right now. And I just invite you just to hold on to that and just work with it. Don't try to ignore it, let it be, and then try and think about why you're having those feelings, okay? So when you look at that diversity wheel, what identities do you think of the most often? There are identities on there that you'll think about least often, and I think that's really important as well. Why is it that you don't have to or don't need to or simply don't think of those particular identities? Some of the identities will have the strongest effects on how you perceive yourself, and there are others that will have the greatest effect on how others perceive you. So when I think about myself in terms of the diversity wheel, I think of myself as a Black woman whose ethnic background is in the Caribbean. So I think about race, I think about gender, and I think about my ethnic background. Depending on where I am, I might think about my age. And again, depending on what situations I'm in, I might think about my education or my work or my location, particularly thinking about my location because I'm in St. Lucia at the moment. I think it's really important for us to recognise how identity may put you in a safer space, and then to acknowledge that those identities that may make you feel safe may make others feel less safe, and equally to identify where you feel less safe yourself in a space. As Todd has said, when we were surveying those of you who were joining the webinar, we asked you to tell us about the social identity that was most shared with members of your club or organisation, and 30% of you said race or ethnicity. This is an important conversation for you and for all of us. And one of the other reasons I like the diversity wheel is because I think it helps us to think about intersectionality, so the interconnected nature of various categorisations and identities. As I said, I'm a Black woman, so there's intersectionality there, and all the other ways that we are not just one one element. We're whole people. And so whilst we're specifically exploring racial identities today, specifically regarding the Black experience, none of us on the panel, and indeed none of you who are involved in the webinar, are a monolith, and actually we can only share our own personal stories as our whole self. That's it from me, Todd.
No, thank you for giving us, because I think that's always important to acknowledge that we are multifaceted, right? It's not just we're just Black. We are so happen to be Black and et cetera, et cetera. And I want people to understand, as President Hogarth put out, there's no place for racism or any isms in this organization. And most importantly, we're not having a political conversation today. We're having a human conversation. So with that being said, my first question for the panel, I'm going to start with you, Dwayne. When did you first realize or identify that you are Black?
Well, I'm in the US. So as you guys know, I'm in New York, and I was born in the Bronx. And I was very aware that I was culturally different because my family's from Barbados. And that was very known to me at a young age. We ate different foods and things than some of the younger kids that I would play with. But knowing my Blackness was not something I fully recognized until we moved out of New York. So in the Bronx is very, Black and brown community. My dad had a teaching job at a university in New Mexico. And so we moved to New Mexico when I was about 6.5. I had my 7th birthday there. And when I went to school that fall, I recognized very quickly that I just looked different than everybody else. And, it didn't register to me what that fully meant until I started getting called the N-word a lot. And I had to get in fights a lot. And I remember just always feeling a little bit isolated at times. And I'll go home and tell my mom, this is what's happening at school. People are calling me the N-word. What should I be doing? What am I doing wrong that's making, people want to essentially verbally attack me or physically attack me at times too. And, my mom really had to prepare me. She had to give me that thick skin about how do you deal with these type of situations and what you should do. Her advice at that time was always stand up for yourself, defend yourself if somebody attacks you physically. And then if you beat them up, go tell the teacher first so they don't have a chance to rat on you. But that was my first, really acknowledgement that I was different and that race was going to play a factor in my life.
No, thank you for sharing that, because race in the U.S., we can talk about that. That could be another webinar. And thank you for sharing your perspective. I'm interested to go to Africa and understand the perspective of race there. And so, Ms. Pearl, when did you first realize or identify as Black?
Mine is a little bit different from that of Dan's because I was born Black by Black parents living in predominantly Black environment. I was born here in Nigeria, and most of the people in my environment, not over 90%, they were all Black. So as early as I learned my name and to say ABC, I knew I was Black. And I knew I was special, kind of. There was this popular saying then that Black is beautiful. Not that Black was more beautiful. Black is beautiful. So I was born believing that there is nothing to be compared with Black. It's Black, it's fine, you're bold, you're Black and beautiful. So as a young girl, as a young growing child, I knew I was Black. I knew there were other colors, but I was meant to understand that I am Black, fine, able, and that made me feel good. And that's how I grew up. I grew up knowing that I was Black and fit to do everything I wanted to do. That was my own experience.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that experience, because like I said, what's in the US, it's a lot of pockets that we're still trying to explore, what does Blackness mean and the empowerment. And I had a great time to live in Brazil. And so Felipe, I want to know your experience. I have my perspective, but I would like to hear your perspective of when did you first identify as Black or realize you were Black?
Well, my story is a little bit different from both, from Dwayne and from Pearl. Here in Brazil, we have a very hard time self-identifying, although more than half of the population self-identified as Black or brown. We are very mixed here. So it's very difficult sometimes to self-identify or to fit in some box. My mother is Black. My entire family from my mother's side is Black. My father is white. My entire family from my father's side is white. So I never actually understood where did I fit. But now I understand that I fit both, and I can experience my intersection between who I am. But Rotary actually helped me to understand my Blackness when I realized that I looked more about like the people who were being helped by Rotary than the people who were helping. So Rotary actually pushed my Black identity like further and further, and I'm thankful for that.
Speaking of Rotary and the Black experience, what has been your experience in Rotary as a Black person?
For me, Todd, it's been an awesome time. I mean, like I said, I joined Rotary here in Nigeria, predominantly Black environment, but very early in my life as a Rotarian, the first year as a Rotarian, I started attending international conventions, and that actually exposed me to the other colors, the white and the rest. But it's been an awesome experience because I found them taking me, probably because of my disposition, I found them taking me the way I am. I've never really experienced any discrimination as a Black person. I have my friends among the whites. I'm covered all over the nations. I have my friends in India. I have my friends in America. And we sort of, we blend so easily. And in Rotary, I've also served in several committees in the Rotary International, where I find myself as the only Black. Like even currently, I'm serving as a member of the Peace Centers Committee. And I do recall that in my meeting of over 40 people, I'm the only one with this kind of a color, and they don't treat me differently. I mean, I'm accepted just the same way I accept them. And it's been a very wonderful experience for me. Like I said, I've never felt different. I mean, like my upbringing was Black is beautiful, Black is bold. And I've carried that toga in everything I've done. I'll come into a place, I mean, being Black, you really can't put me down because I stand different and I stand very bold. So for me, serving in Rotary has been a wonderful experience. It's been a wonderful experience and I've enjoyed wonderful camaraderie and friendship with other colors. And it's only in my mind that I'm Black.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Nadine, how has been your experience? You know, you have been able to create an incredible platform. Can you just talk to us a little bit more about your experience in Rotary as a Black person?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll preface that by saying that one of the reasons I was really reluctant to join Rotary was because I didn't think, so my external perception of it was that it would not be welcoming to me as a Black woman, okay, as a Black working class woman. And yeah, I've actually think I've been really lucky at club level in terms of my experiences as a Black woman in Rotary. I've been part of 3 incredible clubs, Leeds White Rose, Westminster International and Sheffield, all in England. And all of those clubs have been inclusive, diverse, and I felt really welcomed and wanted, and I felt that giving my energy there was worthwhile. I have found though, and it tends to be particularly at a district level in many instances, that I tend to be one of a very small number of Black people in the room having a conversation at that level. When I started the Rotarians Against Racism community, it became increasingly clear to me that there was a lack of support for me as a Black Rotarian. And for me, that translated to a lack of support for the Black people in our communities that we're here to serve. So part of my experience has been that that's been disappointing and it's been hurtful. That's the truth of it. You know, I've experienced microaggressions for sure. I've had people express surprise in Rotary meetings that the AG was a Black woman. I've heard people actually say, gosh, I'm surprised that the new AG is a Black woman in a meeting where I've been. You know, the implication of that being that someone who's Black shouldn't hold a particular position, perhaps in Rotary. I've been tapped on the shoulder and told not to apply for positions, Todd, because of my lack of experience. And at the same time, I've seen white men with significantly less experience actively given those same positions. And I think there's something that Felipe said about how Rotary had helped him because he saw more affinity with the people that Rotary was helping than in the Rotary clubs. Okay? One of the things that's been really noticeable for me is, going to conferences and not seeing any Black speakers, but seeing Black people as part of the entertainment or, as recipients of Rotary funding and project support. So those are just some of the experiences that I've had as a Black woman in Rotary. And I know that there'll be many other experiences that other Black people are having in Rotary. And I think it's really important for us to speak about this and to, to let our fellow Rotarians know what is actually happening on the ground in some places.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, it's, interesting being in Rotary. You don't, as a Black person in areas, you don't see a lot of people that look like you in the club, but you see a lot of people in the organization that's benefiting or impact of service could be Black individuals. And so it's very interesting there. And also, I think I saw this in the chat, it's very, very important for us to understand the historic perspectives of everyone on the call and how Blackness was evolved. And we definitely have a history in the United States that would take another webinar to go through, that we must unpack and unlearn and relearn in order to have effective conversation. So Dwayne, I'm interested to know your perspective. Been in New York, been in the United States. What has been your experience as a Black person in Rotary?
Mostly positive. So I agree with my other two fellow panelists that there's been a lot of new exposure and opportunity that Rotary has created and the ability to impact my community. As I mentioned, I serve at the Rotary Club of Harlem, which is a unicorn in the Rotary world. We are mostly a Black club, serving a very Black community. And from what I've now understood, now 8 years into Rotary, that doesn't exist everywhere. I served 3 years consecutively as president. And during that period, our club was growing and doing more events and having some unique challenges, but also a lot of success. And I would find the clubs in our area attracted to some of the things that we were doing. And sometimes that meant good and bad. Sometimes it was flattery, and sometimes it was almost like, well, how do we piggyback on that success to help ourselves and further ourselves without actually supporting the work that they're doing at the ground level. So there were some things I saw that were good and bad. I've also experienced microaggressions, as Nadine mentioned. There was a district conference where I was asked to give an elevator pitch, like a speech about Rotary. And I won against the variety of counterparts that were there. And at the end, they gave a prize. And later on that night, one of the ladies said, I thought you were going to get up there and do a dance of some kind. That was her very not so nonchalant microaggression. I'm keeping that short, the shortened version of that. But things of that nature that you experience of people not really understanding how you bring your whole full self and having their misconceptions and preconceived notions about who you are, what you should be doing when you're given a platform. And so I think that mostly good. I've seen so much good come through Rotary, and our club does so much, but I've also seen the side that needs a lot of work and hopefully will continue to improve.
Wow, thank you for sharing that perspective, because that is tough conversations here in the U.S. around racism, and honestly, this conversation is now globally. And so, Felipe, someone who's one of the co-founders of Wakanda Rotario, can you tell us a little bit about your experience in Rotary as a Black individual, or just to tell us a little bit about how why the organization was started?
Well, my experience as the fellow panelist was also, it has been amazing and incredible. And after I realized there were a lot of people like me inside Rotary, especially here in Brazil, I was wondering why not? Because I'm having this amazing things inside Rotary, this amazing experience. I want more people to have the same experience. And then I realized that there were a lot of other challenges that sometimes were not being told inside the Rotary clubs, the Rotary districts. And I was wondering why, and actually talking about other Black fellows here in Brazil about this issue in a specific, why there were not a lot of Black people having this amazing experience besides all the other microaggressions and things like that. And we actually try to create this space, this environment where we could not only receive people and create a safe environment for them to talk about their Black experience and being Rotarian, being Rotaractors, being interactors, but also how to promote this inside the Rotary clubs, inside the Rotaract clubs, inside the districts, so they could learn how they could incorporate the Black experiences inside Rotary. So after we did that, we started to receive a lot of hate. And that was not shocking, but it was sad because we felt like while we were quiet, while we were not talking about our issues, we were okay, we were welcome. But as soon as we started to talk about, hey, the things that you say is not okay, the things that you are doing is not okay, your club being predominantly white in your community where you have predominantly Black people, it's not okay. We start to receive a lot of hate, a lot of comments about you shouldn't talk about this. Rotary is not political. This is a political thing. And I think the statement that Rotary International, the president Hogarth released 2 weeks ago, were very powerful, especially for us who were already like doing things inside our communities and doing inside our clubs. That statement give us like the platform and to say like, no, what we are doing is right, and what the path that we are going with Rotary is what our Rotary International want for us to do. So I think that's what Rotarians are supposed to do. They're supposed to be the leaders, the front leaders who shape the future of our organization and our world. And I'm so glad that we are finally taking this path.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. And it's very interesting because when I speak to clubs and zones, and one of the common questions I get from members is, what do I say? We're trying to recruit diversity in our clubs, especially in the United States. We hear this a lot. And I want to reach out to the Black community. I really want to see how I can approach, but how do I approach people who look different than me? Do I say the right things? Do I call you Black? Do I call you African American? Do I call you brown? So I'm curious to know, panelists, your thoughts on this perspective. And I know, Dwayne, you're in the US. I start with getting your perspective, but I definitely would love to hear others.
For sure. Well, the best advice I have, I guess, is a little bit twofold. So number one, it depends on where you meet people. If you're meeting them out in social settings, we know Rotary is a very social dynamic, and you're meeting them in genuine kind of, very relaxed settings. I think it is very easy to build authentic relationships because you should be genuinely and authentically interested in what that person is about, not in what you see and what their appearance is and their race and the things that you can easily glean about their identity, but what drives them, what moves them, what excites them. And if you start with those type of questions, you'll get a very authentic relationship built because you'll have a sense of what that person is really about. And so as far as how do you call them Black, African American, you can ask them, how would they like to be referred? Just like we ask people now about their pronouns. Would you like to be considered a he, a she? You can ask. There's nothing wrong in asking. And again, do it in respect and with an authentic curiosity. Now, when you're meeting people, so I guess the other conversation is that when you don't travel in circles where you have access to diversity, I guess is a way to say that, when your social network and your friend circle doesn't allow you to get diversity, the clubs that are having those challenges need to go out and extend their hand. They need to be going out into Black and brown communities and to marginalized communities and finding out what matters to them. They need to be bringing them into the club or meeting them where they're at and trying to ask questions intelligently. So finding organizations that are doing work on the ground in the areas where you want to have impact, you have to now extend that effort to really understand what is important to them. And that's how you build those authentic relationships, by holding space for them to share their stories in full and allowing them to share with you what it is that's going on in their neighborhoods, impacting their communities. And that's how you'll start to bring more minority and diversity into Rotary, because there'll be a true connection there.
Nice. So I'm hearing, so I know we keep talking about recruitment plans, membership recruitment plan, but we need a membership relationship plan. Go build relationships. That's what I'm hearing today from the panel. Felipe, you're very active in Rotaract. I'm curious to know from your perspective, do you have any advice around building authentic relationships?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that I see a lot of people, and I think you already said that, is people think that we talk only about racism, we talk only about the pain that we live. So we have a lot of other things that we do. We have a lot of specialties that we can talk about. So you can invite us to talk about those things, and not only about the problems and the issues that we face being Black Rotarians or things like that. But one advice that I want to give that is very specific It's a saying in Portuguese. I might mistranslate it in English, but it's when you act with prejudice, comments, or something like that, the way you react. So here in Brazil, we say that once you like step on someone's foot, you immediately apologize, because even though it wasn't your intention, you know that might hurt that person. So even though someone said you hurted me, the thing that you said was not okay. Don't say something else. Apologize and try to understand why that that hurt that person. The same way you would if you step on their foot. So it's being welcome, being understand, being open about those issues, especially with the idea that if you don't experience it, it doesn't mean that it's not important, because we need to understand that we have limits about the way how much we can be empathetic about other people. So we cannot understand the other person entirely. So we need to be aware of our limitations and always be open about the other experiences and validating them.
No, thank you for that. And we were talking about, and this is what I love about Blackness and all identity. It's something to celebrate. It's something to be proud of. We're very proud. I'm proud to be Black. And I'm unapologetically Black. And so I would tell you, it's really, really fun to make these spaces in our organization. And so why is it important, Nadine, for us as Rotarians to make space for inclusive of all identities? Don't matter if you're Black, you're LGBT, disabled, young, old. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. So one of the things that we say in Rotary is that, we say that as a global network that strives to build a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change, we say that we value diversity and we celebrate the contributions of people of all backgrounds. We say we value and celebrate people regardless of their age or their ethnicity or their race or their ability or religion, socioeconomic status, culture, sex, sexual orientation, etc. And gender identity. And so if that's what we say, if that's what we explicitly say, then that must also mean that we want our Rotarians and the people that work with us and interact with us in our clubs and across our various fora, we want those people to be able to be themselves, to be able to show us as they choose who they are. And we can learn and grow and do so much more when we appreciate and value and work with people and their varied identities and experiences. And I also think it's important because when we don't create safe spaces for people to bring the parts of themselves that they want to bring to our clubs, because that's important as well. It's about what they want to bring, not what we think they should bring. When we don't do that, we're all the poorer for it as a Rotary club, as a Rotary district, as a zone and as Rotary International. And actually, when we don't create those safe spaces, those people are all the poorer for it too, because feeling that you have to hide who you are or put parts of your humanity, it's not peaceful. And we're in the business of peace. So actually, this should be central to what we do and to how we actually are.
Thank you. Ms. Pearl, your thoughts on why is this important for us to make this space?
Dr. Todd, we live in a very complex world. And for the service that we render in Rotary, the problems of the world is quite dynamic, very diverse. So we need a lot of diversity in people, in identities, to be able to tackle the unending problems of the world. But for me, it doesn't really make sense if you have diversity, bringing people from all walks of life and all shapes without including them. Like I always say, diversity is inviting everybody to a party. Inclusion is getting everybody to be dancing. And if everybody is not dancing in Rotary, we really cannot get the best. We are differently and awesomely created. The theme when I was governor in 2015-16 was be a gift to the world. And I recall I will always emphasize it to Rotarians, that from the day you are born, you are created differently, differently talented. And these are the talents that we bring to bear when we join a Rotary club. So if you are in a club where you are not engaged, you are not included, you're not given an equal opportunity to bring that yourself in. Rotary loses it. The world loses it. But if you are included and if you are involved, you actually bring out your best to ensure that whatever is the problems or challenges of the world, that we're going to tackle it. So my own take in this particular instance is that let us do everything possible. Let us be deliberate in involving people. We call it inclusion. Let's be deliberate in doing that. Let's go out of our way to be sure that everybody is enjoying this organization. I said this a few minutes ago. Sometimes it looks as if some people are enjoying Rotary more than the others, and it shouldn't be. If we get everybody involved and get everybody included, the world will be a better place. The problems, the challenges we tackle as Rotarians are enormous. No one person or no one sect of people can tackle it. So we need everybody. We need everybody in the dance floor to actually dance to this music to the extent that the challenges of the world are tackled. So this will be my take, Todd, that we get inclusive, deliberate.
I love it. I love the dance. I love to be on the dance floor. Don't let this bow tie fool you. I love the dance, and inclusion is so much fun. And that's why it's great for not only for Rotary, but also everyone that we serve. And so we want to open up and we want to be inclusive. We're going to open it up for a couple Q&A. We're almost at time, but we definitely want to just be able to get a couple questions. So I'm going to turn it over to staff before we do a wrap up and close out.
Awesome. Thank you, Todd, and to all of our panelists. I wish we had another hour to continue the conversation because, I mean, I feel like we barely scratched the surface, both of the Black experience and Rotary in around the world. So I know that I for sure have got some work to do. But let's jump in with questions. Dwayne, what role do white people like me have in advancing this conversation?
Ooh, that's a good one. So, I mean, the U.S., as I will still mention, is different than everywhere else. Not in every other country is white supremacy or power the same, right, in other places. But here, where whites have the majority of access, control, power, wealth, etc., there's a lot that they can do. The first thing I say is educate yourselves. It has been a very interesting year of 2020 to see how much disconnect there was in terms of education within our country and how much lack of history our white counterparts knew about the Black experience and how painful and difficult systemic racism has been. So education is first. Then you got to share what you've learned. You got to make sure that what you are educating yourself on, you're including the people in your family in those conversations. You're including your colleagues in those conversations. You're sharing and experiencing and learning and growing together, because that's how we're going to overcome that knowledge gap. And then you got to find ways to get involved. And so getting involved could mean a variety of things. It could be protesting. We love people that get out there and march. We're all about that. You want to go out and advocate for certain legislation and policy and bills. You have access to legislatures or politicians in your local town. If you want to run for office, those are ways to get involved. You can really elevate Black voices. One of the things that I've been very inspired by is people, and Leanne is one of them here doing it today. Our former RI director, Jeffrey Carteret, used to elevate Black voices and find a way to promote them to stages where they could share their experience to make sure that those stories are not being lost and that our voices are making sure that they're being heard. And so when you're on board positions, if you serve on a board, nonprofit or through Rotary, look around the table and see, does this board have the diversity, have the equity lens to really be able to serve the community that we're claiming to serve? And if it does not, that is an opportunity for you as a white person to speak up and say, this could be a better situation. If you're a school board, if you're a teacher and you look at the curriculum and the curriculum is skewing towards white supremacy and history and not Black history, you have an opportunity. No matter what space you occupy, I think white people have the responsibility now to know better and do better. And I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Dwayne. Nadine, this question's for you. So Felipe, I love how you talked about just saying sorry if you step on someone's foot. I think that's one really important way to repair. But Nadine, how do we, if we see inappropriate behavior or comments or languages, how can we address that? In our last webinar, we had a panelist who says, what we ignore, we accept. So I'd love for you to address that.
Absolutely, and thanks, that's a really good question. There are different ways that we can address when we see things. And the first thing I would say is, you know, if you witness a black person experiencing something discriminatory, or somebody saying something that's racist, then let the person know that actually I don't think this is acceptable. You know, this is a horrible situation. What would you like to do about this? And don't leave it to the black person to do the thing themselves. Okay, it's not always our job to fight racism and discrimination. There's a really important role here for other people to play. But you can just say to somebody, can I just stop you there? I'm hearing what you're saying and I don't feel comfortable with what you just said or what you just did. I'm surprised to hear you saying that. Maybe you don't mean it, but that sounds like a racist remark. You know, I think what you're saying or doing discriminates against, you know, black people. I think it's really important to say these things to people. And, you know, it sounds as though you're saying is another way to challenge what the person might be saying. And one thing I would say is, if people don't speak up, then as you said, the person just gets away with the behaviour, and that's an acceptance of that behaviour. So we've actually got to get really brave about this. And, you know, it might feel uncomfortable for somebody to speak up against that, but think about how uncomfortable it is to be the subject of discrimination, to be the subject of racism all the time. Think about that, and then you'll find that energy to be brave and to say it and do something and be the people that actually we all need to be.
Thank you. I wish we had more time for questions, but I'm going to throw one last one to Todd, and then he can wrap up the session for us. So Todd, to what extent do topics like this actually reinforce the barriers that we're all trying to get past? I'm going to leave that one with you and let you wrap up in the beautiful way you do.
Oh, no, that's great. And I think that's a conversation that's worth exploring in addition. I think we're going to have time for it. But I will say this is that first, it's hard to do something about something you don't recognize or acknowledge. And so it's important for us to acknowledge history that's good and bad so that we don't repeat it. But most important, current climate to ensure that we're being a part of the action and change we wish to see in our communities. So as a wrap up, because I want you all to know we're going to take action, and I'm going to encourage you to let this conversation be the first of many. I see a lot of questions around, we should have a conversation about US and how does race impact this? Hey, you don't have to wait on us. You can go and have these conversations yourself. You can be curious. That's the first action point I want you to walk away. Be curious. Think about how migration has impacted the culture of your communities. Explore the Black history locally, globally, or regionally. Whether you're in the US or all around the world, we have a global panel today. Number two, be intentional. Commit yourself to diversifying your club programming. Commit yourself to building relationships. Commit yourself for really learning and doing the work and bringing people along with you. I love this. Be engaged. Be engaged. Create service projects. We have a lot of things that you can create your engagement. Create different funding programs, different grants. We have the 4-way speech contest, right? Who are you partnering with? What schools are you partnering with? There's a lot of great ways to be engaged and do great things. Last but not least, be an example. Take what you learned today and share it, teach it, lead it with your actions and with your behaviors. And most importantly, like we heard from Mother Pearl today, let's dance. It's a fun time to be alive. And we're going to continue dancing with these conversations. And here's a great way for you to share this with your club. You can share this recording. We have a lot of resources that we're continuing to build together around diversity, equity, and inclusion. You will get this in the slide as you get this recording, but please check it out. And all in all, I just want to say thank you all. Thank you to panelists for being here today. Thank you for coming to this conversation and not knowing what to expect, because we're on a journey here. We are explorers, and it does not start and end here, okay? And so just as I said earlier, thank you all so much for all my panelists, Nadine, Pearl, Dwayne, Felipe, and all the staff who made this historic moment happen. And it won't be the last. So with that, without further ado, this is the end of our webinar. And thank you all. Continue to have a great morning, afternoon, and night. See you next time.